Why does it feel so difficult to trust God when life takes a turn we never expected? Why do we wrestle with surrender when circumstances crumble and answers seem impossibly distant? This is the heart of our spiritual journey, to trust a God who sees the end from the beginning, even when we feel blindfolded, stumbling through the darkness. You've been there, haven't you? In a moment when nothing added up, when life felt unfair, when pain seemed purposeless, when you questioned, God, why me? Let me tell you something profound. Faith doesn't mean understanding, it means surrendering the need to understand. Consider this. If you stood on the shoreline staring at the waves, how much of the ocean could you see? A sliver, a fraction, a mere ripple in a vast, infinite expanse. That's what we're looking at when we try to comprehend God's plan. His ways are so much higher than ours that they often feel incomprehensible, but that doesn't mean they lack purpose. Proverbs 3:05 reminds us, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding." This isn't an invitation to blind ignorance, but a call to humble faith, to trust that though the journey is unclear, the destination holds divine perfection. Take a moment to reflect on your life. Have you ever looked back at a painful season and finally understood why it happened? Perhaps a closed door saved you from harm, or a delay brought you something better than you imagined. If you've experienced that, why doubt now? Why assume this moment of confusion isn't part of the masterpiece God is painting? Pause and ask yourself, what if the chaos in my life is God's construction site? Faith grows strongest in uncertainty. It is when we're stripped of control that we truly rely on the one who controls everything. Trust is not built in the safety of knowing, it's forged in the fire of not knowing. When we lean into God's character rather than our circumstances, we find peace that surpasses all understanding.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
But here's the thing, trusting God doesn't mean you won't question Him. Even Jesus, in His humanity, cried out in Gethsemane, "Father, if it is possible, take this cup from me." Yet He followed it with, "Not my will, but yours be done." Can we do the same? Can you whisper, "God, this hurts, but I trust you"? Remember, trust isn't a passive act. It's active, deliberate, and often a daily choice. You may not feel it immediately, but every time you choose trust over doubt, you strengthen your faith muscle. Every time you surrender your need for control, you align yourself with God's higher ways. So, as you sit in your confusion or your pain today, choose trust. Choose to believe that the God who orchestrates galaxies also cares about the details of your life. And when you feel like giving up, ask yourself, what if I'm closer to the breakthrough than I think? Pain changes things. It shifts the way we see the world, the way we see others, and most importantly, the way we see ourselves. Sometimes it feels like life shatters us, leaving us picking up the pieces and asking, why did this happen to me? But here's the truth. When life breaks you, it's not the end. It's often the beginning of something greater. Think about a seed buried deep in the soil. From the outside, it looks like nothing is happening, but beneath the surface where no one can see, it's splitting apart. That breaking isn't the end of the seed, it's the start of growth. For something new to emerge, the old must give way. So when your life feels broken, remember, growth doesn't happen without breaking. But here's where it gets difficult. Most of us want the growth without the breaking, the answers without the waiting, the blessings without the battles. That's not how it works. Have you ever tried to hold on to something that God was trying to remove? Maybe it was a relationship, a job, or a plan you clung to with all your might because letting go felt like losing control. But God wasn't taking it from you to punish you. He was creating space for something better. It's like trying to hold water in a closed fist. The tighter you grip, the more it slips away. But when you release your hand, the water pools, filling your open palm. That's what trust looks like. Releasing the need to control everything so God can fill your life with what you truly need. But what happens when the breaking feels unbearable, when the pain is too much? This is where trust deepens. Look back at moments you thought you couldn't survive. You're here now, aren't you? You made it through. What if the same strength that carried you then is available now? Here's something most people don't realize. Strength doesn't come from avoiding hardship. It comes from enduring it. Faith is not tested in the calm. It's tested in the storm. And every storm has an end, even if you can't see it yet. Sometimes, though, the hardest part isn't the storm itself, it's the waiting. Waiting for the healing, waiting for the restoration, waiting for the answers. And in that waiting, doubt creeps in. You start to question if God sees you, if He cares, if He's even there. But consider this, just because you can't see the sun during a storm doesn't mean it's not there. It's still shining, still holding everything in place, even when it's hidden behind the clouds. God's presence works the same way. Even when you don't feel Him, He's still there, holding you together, working behind the scenes in ways you can't imagine. The question is, will you trust Him in the silence? Will you trust Him when the answers don't come quickly or in the way you want? This isn't about pretending to be okay when you're not. It's about being honest with God. He can handle your questions, your anger, your pain. In fact, He invites it. He's not asking you to be strong on your own. He's asking you to let Him be your strength. When you feel like you're at the end of your rope, remind yourself of this: God has no limits. What feels like the end for you is never the end for Him. He specializes in turning graves into gardens, ashes into beauty, mourning into joy. So the next time you feel broken, think about this. What if God isn't breaking you to destroy you? What if He's breaking you to build you into someone stronger, someone who can carry the weight of the blessings He's preparing for you? Life rarely goes the way we expect. Plans unravel, relationships shift, and opportunities slip through our fingers. It's in these moments, when nothing seems to make sense, that faith becomes more than a word. It becomes a choice. The hardest part of faith is the waiting. Waiting for the healing, waiting for the breakthrough, waiting for the clarity that might never come. It's uncomfortable, it's frustrating, but it's also where trust grows. You might be holding on to questions that feel unbearable. Why did that person leave? Why did the diagnosis come? Why did the opportunity you prayed so hard for fall through? Silence can feel cruel in these moments, but it's not a punishment. Sometimes, silence is space. Space for trust to grow deeper than explanations ever could. Think about the way a child trusts their parent. They don't demand a detailed plan for every meal, every outing, or every bedtime story. They trust because they know they're loved, even if they don't fully understand how things work. It's not blind trust, it's relational trust. What if faith isn't about getting answers but about leaning on the one who already knows? We crave certainty because uncertainty feels like a threat. But certainty isn't the foundation of faith. God's character is. If you trust that He's good, then you can trust that He's working for your good, even when life feels upside down. That doesn't mean the pain goes away overnight. It doesn't mean the questions disappear. It means those questions don't control you anymore. You stop needing all the answers, and you start finding peace in the fact that God has them. Sometimes life feels like walking through a thick fog. You can only see a few steps ahead, but you keep moving because you trust the road exists. Faith is like that. It's not knowing the whole plan. It's trusting that there is one. There will be days when doubt feels louder than trust. Days when giving up seems easier than pressing forward. On those days, remember this: you don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to keep showing up. God doesn't need your perfection, He wants your persistence. Think about the greatest stories ever told. They all have moments of tension, moments when the hero seems lost, moments when victory feels impossible. But those moments are what make the story worth telling. Your life is no different. The struggle doesn't mean the story is over. Faith isn't pretending everything's okay. It's admitting that it's not, and trusting that God is still in control. It's holding on to hope when hope feels impossible. It's believing that even in the silence, even in the waiting, God is working. You might not understand why things happened the way they did. You might never understand. But the lack of understanding doesn't mean the absence of purpose. Life's biggest storms have a way of revealing what really matters. When everything else is stripped away, what remains? Trust. Trust that the God who holds the universe together is also holding you. Even when life doesn't make sense, God's love never stops. It's not dependent on your circumstances or your performance. It's constant, unshakable, and powerful enough to carry you through anything. The truth is, you might never get all the answers you're looking for, but maybe the answers aren't the point. Maybe the point is learning to live beyond the questions, to live in faith, not because you have everything figured out, but because you trust the one who does. And that's enough. God is enough. His love is enough. Even when life feels like it's falling apart, He is holding it all together. This isn't the end of your story. It's just one chapter. Keep trusting, keep moving forward, and remember, even when life doesn't make sense, God is still in control. When everything feels uncertain, it's easy to let fear take over. Fear thrives in the unknown, in the spaces where clarity is missing and where the answers seem just out of reach. But fear, as real as it feels, is a liar. It whispers that you're alone, that you have to figure it all out, that God is absent when you need Him the most. That's not the truth. God is present in the chaos, in the confusion, and in the heartbreak. When you're crying out for direction and the silence feels unbearable, it's not because He's ignoring you. Silence doesn't mean absence. Silence can mean trust. Trust that God is working in ways you can't see yet, arranging the pieces of your life in ways you wouldn't expect. Think about what happens when a gardener plants a seed. Beneath the soil, where no one can see, something miraculous begins to happen. Roots spread, life takes hold, and transformation begins. The seed doesn't grow because it's trying harder. It grows because it's in the hands of the gardener, who knows exactly what it needs. That's what faith looks like. It's not about doing more, fixing everything, or trying to control what feels uncontrollable. It's about surrendering, letting God, the ultimate gardener, do the work in His way and in His time. When things fall apart, it's easy to feel like you're being punished or abandoned. But what if the breaking isn't the end? What if it's a necessary part of the process? A vase that shatters can be repaired, but not in its old form. It can be remade into something stronger, more beautiful, something that tells a story through its scars. You're not being abandoned, you're being transformed. Faith doesn't erase the pain, but it gives it meaning. It's what allows you to say, I don't understand this, but I trust the one who does. It's what lets you wake up in the morning and take one more step forward, even when you don't know where the road leads. You don't need to see the whole picture. You just need to trust that the artist knows what he's creating. The hardest thing to let go of is control. We hold so tightly to the way we think things should be, to our expectations and our timelines. But control is an illusion. We never really had it in the first place. Letting go isn't losing control. It's recognizing that God is the only one who ever truly had it. When life feels unfair, it's tempting to compare, to look at someone else's life and wonder why they got the miracle and you got the storm. But comparison steals joy and blinds you to the unique work God is doing in your life. He hasn't forgotten you. He hasn't overlooked you. He's just working on a different timeline, one that's guided by perfect wisdom, not fleeting emotions. Every person you see has a battle you can't see. Every person carries questions, doubts, and struggles that may never make it to the surface. But God sees it all. He sees you. You're not defined by the things that have gone wrong in your life. You're not defined by the pain or the questions. You're defined by the love of a God who calls you His. A God who is in control, even when the world feels out of control. This kind of trust isn't passive. It's not sitting back and doing nothing. It's choosing every day to believe that God is working even when you can't see it. It's living with open hands, ready to release what you can't control and embrace what He has planned. You're going to face storms, that's inevitable, but you have a choice in how you respond. Will you let the waves drown you, or will you trust the one who calms? Will you let the uncertainty paralyze you, or will you move forward, even with shaky steps? Faith isn't about avoiding the storm, it's about finding peace in the middle of it. God doesn't promise a life free of hardship. He promises a life where He walks with you through it. He promises strength for the moment, peace that doesn't make sense, and joy that can't be explained. He promises that you'll never face anything alone. So even when life feels overwhelming, when nothing seems to make sense, when the questions feel heavier than the answers, remember this: God is still in control. He's not distant. He's not uninvolved. He's working all things for good, even when it doesn't look like it right now. Your story isn't finished. The pieces that feel broken, the chapters that feel incomplete, they're all part of something greater. Trust the one who sees the whole picture. Let go of the need to understand everything and rest in the knowledge that you are held by the Creator of the universe. God is in control, always, even now.